Alrighty, here are the answers from yesterday's starters. When you are simplifying, you're looking at 12 and 144 and you're figuring out what you can divide both 12 and 144 by. And in this case, we're going to divide by 12. That's our greatest common factor. 12 divided by 12 is 1. And 144 divided by 12 is 12. So we simplify and we get 1/12. 15 and 45, the greatest common factor for 15 and 45 is 15. So we can divide both the top and the bottom, the numerator and the denominator, by 15. 15 divided by 15 is equal to 1. And 45 divided by 15 is equal to 3. Simplifies to 1/3. 75 and 100, you can divide both of those by 25. And 75 divided by 25 is 3. And 100 divided by 25 is 4. So we've got 3/4. All right, when we're looking at whether the fractions are equivalent, I did want to mention too that these can also be ratios. So when we work on IXL tomorrow, you might see 15 over 60, but it's written with a colon in between, 15 to 60, and 3 to 4. If you see that they're written with a colon, just write them as fractions. And then to get from 15 to 3, we divide by 5. And when we divide 60 by 5, it does not equal 4. Therefore, those two are not equivalent. So I also wanted to show you another way that you can do that. Once you have them written, you can cross multiply. And you can multiply 15 times 4, and that equals 60. And then if you cross multiply 60 times 3, that's 180. If when you cross multiply, those numbers are not the same, and in this case they're not, one of them 60 and one of them is 180, they are not equivalent. So if you divide 60 by 5, that would equal 12, not 4. So that is not true. Therefore, those are not equivalent. I like to do the cross multiplication way because that's going to lead us into proportions. So again, if you just multiply 4 times 15, that's equal to 60. And then 60 times 3 is 180. And since those two are not equal, they are not equivalent. All right, so we can do the same thing here. We can do it either way. We can do 2 times what equals 24, and that would be 2 times 12. And so whatever we do on the bottom, we have to do on the top, and whatever we do on the top, we have to do on the bottom. 5 times 12 is 60. It is not 144. So those two are not equivalent. That would be a no. And remember that we can also, that could be written as 2 to 5 and 24 to to 144. And then we just change them into fractions. Instead of writing them as a ratio this way, we can write them as a ratio this way. Or what I think is the easier way is to cross multiply. If we multiply 144 times 2, that equals 288. And if we multiply 5 times 24, that is 120. And if these two things are not equal when we cross multiply, that means that they are not equivalent. And then on the last one, we've got 15 divided by 5 is equal to 3. And 20 divided by 5 would equal 4. So this also is not going to be equivalent. I might show you one that is. So these are also not equivalent. Or we could cross multiply. So we have 15 twentieths and 3 fifths. 15 times 5 is equal to 75. 20 times 3 is 60. Those two things are not equal, so they are not equivalent. And your explanation can just be that when you divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number, you don't get 3 fifths. Or you can explain that when you cross multiply, your answers are not the same. I do want to show you one that works. So we could have a ratio of 1 to 2 and 8 to 16. Now this one's not on your sheet. But if they asked about those two, we could change them into fractions, which would be 1/2 and 8/16. And we could say 1 times 8 equals 8, and 2 times 8 does equal 16. So those are equivalent. That would be a yes. Or we could do 1/2 and 8/16. And then when we cross multiply, 1 times 16 is equal to 16. And 2 times 8 equals 16. So that would be a yes. Those are equivalent. Equivalent means like they're the same name or same representation, but they're named differently. Okay, and then we've got a review of the equations. So remember that y over 5 means y divided by 5 equals 30. We're going to circle that y. That's what we're trying to figure out, what it equals. The opposite, the thing that's with the y, is dividing by 5. So we're going to do the opposite and multiply by 5. These two things will cancel each other out. And that's going to leave us with just y on this side. And 30 times 5 is equal to 150. So y is equal to 150. And then if we put that up here, 150 divided by 5 does equal 30. So that's true. That's the correct answer. And then we've got our variable here. And remember, if there's nothing in between our coefficient, this number, and our variable, that means we're multiplying. So we're doing 0.2 times x, and that's going to equal 0.6. So 2/10 times x is equal to 6/10. We circle that, X, the opposite of multiplying by 2/10 is dividing by 2/10. And last week, this was a problem for some of you. So when we do this problem, I'm going to do it over here. We've got 6/10, and I'm not going to put the 0 with it. I'm just going to put the 6/10, and we're dividing that by 2/10. Some of you messed up last week and had the decimal in the wrong spot. You cannot divide by a decimal, so you have to move that decimal one place. And if you move it on the outside of the box, you have to move it inside of the box too. So now my decimal is at the end of my 2. Now it's at the end of my 6. And really, we're just doing 6 divided by 2 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. So when I divide, I get 3 is equal to X. And then when I check that, and I do 0.2 times 3, 2 times 3 is 6. And then since I've got one number after the decimal in my problem, I need one number in my answer, and that's what I had over here. So X is equal to 3.